because we talked about an intelligence connection, Richie, but what I've really been delving into is how long was this guy on the quote unquote Trilateral Commission? I've now confirmed that at
Okay.
least from 1995 to 2008, and Vicky Ward claims 2011. Now, 2008, his crimes are well known at this point, and he's still at the Trilateral Commission. This is a powerful, powerful man.
This is a Rockefeller Round Table Group, isn't it? The Trilateral Commission.
Yes.
And why would this guy be on the commission? I mean, Epstein's his career is interesting enough in terms of how he got his money, but you wouldn't have imagined him being on, a group like that, or being involved with a so-called think tank like that. It's even more bizarre, that, Jason. I can't figure that out.
Yeah, it's very hard for me to understand. Is this guy gaining intel? Is he seed funding for intelligence organizations? Is he co-opting people there? One of the very stunning things. I'm not God. I don't remember everything. I appreciate you saying that. My mind's like as good as it is. But one of the things I found here is through the Rockefeller Archive. I found out that in 1972, it was actually Brzezinski and David Rockefeller that came up with the Trilateral Commission because they were on their way to the Bilderberg meeting in a plane, and the other executive board members didn't want to allow Japan to come to these meetings. So Rockefeller said, you know what, I'm just going to set up another group. We'll have our elitists come in, and we'll also invite the Japanese elite in there as well. So I'm constantly learning too. And I need more people to dig into this stuff because the Trilateral Commission is a very powerful group. This guy was invested everywhere. Harvard University, he was investing, he was given to charities such as Elton John's charity. He had a cabin at a school for basically young girls, his own private cabin. I mean, the connections this man had, the charities he was involved in, the politicians that took money from him, his business associates like Khashoggi. This isn't just, molesting dozens and dozens, if not hundreds or thousands of girls. This is very well an intelligence operation that dates back to the 80s.
It dates right back to the 80s. Jason Bermas is our guest today. Delighted to have Jason on the programme. Info Warrior on YouTube. Subscribe to his channel. I know that many of our listeners are well aware of who Jason is, so I don't have to play Jason up at all. It's great to have him on the programme. Jason, Johnny Vedmore is an investigative journalist here in the UK. Lovely fella, Johnny. I interviewed him last week, and he's really good. He's written an article which has appeared on The Swamp.media, about Epstein's association with a woman called Nicole Junkerman, who's connected with the Israeli State Intelligence Service, Mossad. And she's part of a company called Carbine. Well, she's a big investor in a company called Carbine. And they're doing something which most American people won't know. You may very well know yourself, but most people won't know. They're working on an app, a call handling app that so say that when it's rolled out, people in New York or in Delaware or in Massachusetts, they wouldn't phone 911 to report an emergency. They would let the Carbine app do it. And this Carbine app is run basically by former Israeli intelligence people. She's involved in it. She's connected to Epstein. And the worst of it is, they would then begin live streaming your emergency and dealing with it for you, but gathering reams and reams and reams of data on you and on your environment, and all of it going straight to former Israeli intelligence people. Would you believe it, Jason? It's scary stuff. And this woman is intimately connected to Epstein. Nicole Junkerman is her name. She's involved in trying to get her fingers, her hands on the National Health Service here in England as well. So this stuff is multifaceted, Jason, isn't it? It goes way beyond just Epstein flying around in a plane and abusing children. It goes way beyond that.
Yeah, there's a couple of great points there. First of all, I'm going to have Johnny on later today in about 4.5 hours after.
Brilliant. I'm delighted. That's wonderful news.
Yeah, because this is a great article, and this is really just one of the Israeli Mossad connections. If you look at, first of all, you were talking about data collecting and intelligence. In my film Fabled Enemies, I have a 20-minute section where not only do we go over the intelligence network of the art students and the dancing Israelis, but Amdocs and Converse, who then were handling all the phone calls basically throughout the United States. And although they didn't have access to, say, the voice information, such as the NSA at the time, through Promise and Carnivore software, and that's going to be key. We'll get to that in a second. They did have associations. In other words, numbers that were calling one another, how long they were calling one another, and they were able to infiltrate all sorts of intelligence networks from the Secret Service down the line. And again, that's in Fabled Enemies. People can check that out for free. Now, fast forward to Robert Maxwell, super spy and media magnate. You know, there's books out there. His daughter is the main procurer for Epstein. Ghislaine Maxwell's father, Robert Maxwell, I mean, you can read, there are several books on it now, but his connections to the Mossad and the State of Israel are absolutely undeniable. And he's actually the one who is alleged to have stolen that Promise software I just discussed, which was U.S. intelligence software to basically screen for keywords, terrorist words. They said it was like bomb or whatever to keep up on people. Stole that intelligence and presumably, if he was Israeli Mossad, gave it to them. So this Junkerman could just be the next level of that type of big data intelligence gathering in this track trace database society we live in.
Loads and loads of tweets on this. I suggest people go to Twitter where it says search Twitter. It's Richie Allen Show, all one word, so you can see what people are tweeting to me in real time, if I can say that. Follow Jason, thousands of followers on Twitter. It's at Jason Bermas, Bermas. Info Warrior is the YouTube channel, which is absolutely brilliant, folks. You know, you're dealing with a guy, Jason, I shouldn't say a guy, a journalist who is reporting on this stuff, but using facts to support his contention, his assertions. This is really, really great stuff. Yeah, Junkerman is an interesting one. I'm delighted that you've got Johnny coming on the program. And you might know Johnny I don't know how long you know Johnny or how you came across him, but that's a brilliant bit of research by Johnny Vedmore there. So what about Robert Maxwell then? He went, most people in the UK, Jason, will remember him as a guy who used to publish the Daily Mirror. You know, he was very wealthy and he died. He fell off his boat, but I mean, he was far more than that, wasn't he? Far more.
Yeah, it really seems like he was far more. And even falling off that boat, did he have a heart attack? Did he drown? The autopsy's not very clear on that. He had all sorts of connections, and that would make sense. We know that intelligence, you know, across the board from the Mossad to the CIA is interested in controlling the narrative and controlling the media. And, you know, again, it would be hard-pressed for them to admit that, but there was a huge ceremony in Israel after the guy died where it was said that he had done more for the nation that could ever be said. On top of that, the boat in which this incident happened was named after his daughter. And then you look at the fact that even Alan Dershowitz, who, you know, we can't believe, but I've got into Dershowitz at length previously to this, even his connections to Assange as a lawyer, et cetera, we have to look at everything, right? He claims in court that he was introduced to Jeffrey Epstein at the same time as Ghislaine Maxwell by the Lady Rothschild. And you wonder why there's all these conspiracy theories about the Rothschild family, Richie.
That's on the record, Jason, isn't it? That he was introduced by Lady Rothschild. That's on the record. That isn't conjecture. It's fact.
Yeah, that's in his deposition in court against Bradley Edwards, one of the men who actually beat Epstein this year. In fact, it might have been in December or February, but basically Bradley Edwards, when he initially was representing all of these women, Dershowitz and others came at him so hard they wanted him disbarred. You know, they try to discredit these people, but they went after specifically the lawyers, and in a lawsuit, Epstein sued him and another lawyer. So about a year later, he turns the tables. He countersues Epstein. This ensues for another 8 years, so almost a decade goes by. And finally, a judge says, you know what? It's enough. We're going to have this trial. And on the day they were picking jurors, Epstein folded, paid Bradley Edwards, who's still representing a lot of these women, by the way, an undisclosed amount of money, and had to give up a written statement where he essentially said that Edwards had done his job right and diligently, had never been deceptive, and Epstein used unjust and illegal acts against him. I don't want to misquote it, but it's out there. It's about a paragraph long. It's unbelievable. This story is so bizarre. So I don't even have all of the Dershowitz testimony. A lot of this stuff is leaking out. But in that testimony, it's also talked about, everybody thinks that we have all the flight logs, Richie. We don't. Okay, we have partial flight logs from one pilot on one vessel. We know at least of one other helicopter, if not two, and there's possibly another private jet. On top of that, there's two other confirmed pilots that we have no records from. Last night during a AMA live stream, somebody brought to my attention, they had given me a PDF file with about 819 pages of depositions that Bradley Edwards, while interviewing one of these pilots, asked whether he had piloted 3 12-year-old girls from France who did not speak English to Epstein on his island and then flown them back the very same night.
It's sickening that, Jason, when you hear that. How could he do that without blowing the whistle? How could he not call the police? How could he not call somebody? I hate that. You know, I know that might be an aside to the overall bigger issues we're talking about, but how could you do that? How could you deliver the children to him?
It's mind-boggling, but when you read these different lawsuits, for instance, I believe, Jane Doe 43. You know, not only right now in these indictments, we have 3 employees that are absolutely working with the prosecution against Epstein. I would assume that those names are possibly Sarah Kalin, who is named in one of these lawsuits, Leslie Groff, who is named in one of these lawsuits, and I believe the other one's name is Natasha Malashev. Although there's a Marcinkova woman who's named in other lawsuits. Many of these people are named, okay? And while these things were going on back in 2008, 2009, many of them were actually given new identities, even then, Richie. So aside from that, in these allegations by Jane Doe 43, and Edwards is the lawyer in this, I believe, it talks about butlers, housemaids, servants, all signing non-disclosure agreements, all being a part of this operation, all contacting Epstein's lawyers whenever contacted by law enforcement. I mean, this stuff is in black and white. And again, that's why I think my channel is pretty important. It's not just me talking. I show the people this stuff as we go over it.
That's really important.